The sound of her heels cut through the quiet terminal, steady and deliberate. Elena Carter, 52, had just been sworn in as director of the FBI. The first thing she wanted was to get home, to a shower, to a moment of peace. But in a heartbeat, everything changed. 2 airport officers saw only a black woman in a suit. They didn't see the years of service, the decades of training, or the secrets she carried for the safety of the nation. Before she could react, hands grabbed, cuffs clicked, and the world froze. The FBI director was being detained, and the entire country was about to watch. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe, so more stories like this reach people who need to hear. Elena Carter moved through Reagan National Airport with the calm precision of someone, trained to notice everything and reveal nothing. 52, freshly appointed FBI director, her slate gray suit was immaculate, her briefcase clasped tightly in one hand. Inside lay documents so sensitive most of the country wouldn't even know they existed. It was 9:30 p.m., and Washington, D.C. was sticky with early summer heat. Elena had just flown in from Seattle, red-eye briefings, classified updates, and endless decisions weighing on her shoulders. All she wanted was a driver, a shower, and a few hours of sleep before the next day's storm of meetings. She passed Gate 37, eyes scanning without pause. That's when she saw them. 2 airport officers, mid-30s, standing near a service kiosk. No one else seemed to notice the silent nod they exchanged, the way they fixated on her. Years of experience told her to keep moving, but instinct made her prepare. Elena had faced tension before, in the field, in courtrooms, in high-level meetings where lives hung in the balance, but never like this. Never where the threat came not from criminals, but from those sworn to protect the public. She didn't know yet that a simple walk through an airport would turn into a lesson on prejudice, protocol, and power. As she drew closer, a small voice of suspicion and authority would collide with decades of discipline and service. And in that collision, the country would witness an extraordinary test of courage and composure. An ordinary moment turned historic. Elena approached the security checkpoint. Her steps measured, every movement intentional. She hadn't yet seen the officer step forward, blocking her path. "Excuse me, ma'am, can we ask where you're headed?" one of them said, voice casual, but with an edge that immediately put her on alert. Elena stopped, turning slowly, her posture calm but firm. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her tone quiet yet unwavering. The taller officer stepped closer, eyes scanning her from head to toe. "You match a description," he said. "Middle-aged black woman, gray suit, briefcase. Possibly carrying sensitive material?" Elena's eyebrow arched. "You mean I match the description of a federal employee heading home after work?" She replied, measured. "I am the director of the FBI." A beat of silence. Then a smirk. "Got any ID to back that up?" She reached into her inner jacket pocket and produced her credentials. Government-issued, unmistakable. He glanced, then laughed under his breath, nudging his partner. "You can't just wave a badge and expect us to believe it," he said. Around them, travelers paused. A teenager lifted her earbuds. A woman with a stroller stopped mid-step. Phones appeared recording, but the officers were locked in on their assumptions. "I'm identifying myself as protocol dictates," Elena said calmly. "Protocol's not your call tonight," the second officer replied. "We're taking you in for questioning." Before she could respond, one reached for her briefcase. Elena stepped back. "Do not touch that. You have no authority." Her voice, clear and precise, cut through the growing murmur of the crowd. Yet the officers didn't yield. One grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back, the other unclipping handcuffs from his belt. Her briefcase fell with a thud. Gasps echoed. Cameras lifted. She didn't resist, but she didn't help either. She stood tall, eyes locked on the men. "You're making a mistake. I've shown you my credentials. I've identified myself. Contact your supervisor, now." Minutes stretched like hours. The taller officer muttered something about keeping the airport safe. Elena's calm gaze didn't waver. "You're unlawfully detaining a federal official," she said. "You have no idea what you're handling." The crowd thickened, whispers spreading. Phones were recording everything. The officers hesitated, but pride and routine held them in place. Elena's hands remained visible, her stance unshakable, her presence demanding respect even before anyone formally recognized her authority. Then, finally, a voice cut through static. A colleague over the radio reporting DHS agents inbound. The tension shifted. The officers froze. One looked at Elena, realization dawning. The handcuffs were removed, her briefcase returned. Elena adjusted her blazer, flexing her wrists where faint red marks remained. The silent crowd had witnessed more than a mistake. They had seen courage, restraint, and the raw injustice of bias. In that airport, the unthinkable had unfolded, and the lesson had only just begun. Elena's wrists still bore faint red marks as she stood in the middle of the terminal, the briefcase finally back in her hands. Cameras swiveled, travelers whispered, and the two officers remained frozen, their bravado evaporating under the weight of realization. She hadn't flinched, hadn't yelled, hadn't resisted, but the humiliation was raw, public, and undeniable. The taller officer's voice cracked as he muttered, You're really the FBI director?" "Yes," Elena said, calm but piercing. "I've carried this title for decades. I've served in dangerous operations, overseen counterterrorism cases, and held clearances you can't even imagine. And yet you decided your assumptions mattered more than my credentials." Her eyes scanned the crowd. Some looked shocked, some sympathetic, all recording. The weight of the moment was heavier than the cuffs that had held her. Every misstep of theirs, every biased assumption, was now visible for the entire nation to witness. Before the officers could speak again, DHS agents arrived. Their presence shifted the energy immediately, commanding, professional, authoritative. The officers backed off. One of the agents took Elena's statement while another verified her identity through secondary credentials. "Stand down. This ends now," the lead agent said to the officers, firm and final. The terminal seemed to exhale. Elena adjusted her blazer, her hands steady, her voice calm as she addressed the growing crowd. I complied. I identified myself. I asked for verification. I was handcuffed in public despite following protocol precisely. What you saw here isn't just a mistake. It's a glimpse of how bias and assumption can override justice. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then whispers spread, phones clicked, and the reality sank in. A highly trained, decorated FBI director had been detained by officers who judged her by appearance, not authority. Elena didn't speak in anger or accusation. She spoke in quiet authority, letting the injustice itself make the statement. The officers stood exposed, their assumptions laid bare, and the world had watched every second. In that terminal, the lesson was unmistakable. Power, authority, and service aren't always recognized by appearances, and the courage to remain composed under such scrutiny can become a force far stronger than any badge. Elena walked from the terminal to her car, each step deliberate, unhurried. Her hands were free, her briefcase secured, but the marks on her wrists remained, a silent reminder of what had just happened. Around her, the crowd and cameras were still buzzing, phones capturing the moment that had already gone viral. Inside the FBI vehicle, her detail remained quiet, allowing her to process the incident. Elena didn't speak immediately. She simply exhaled, letting the tension drain. Finally, she looked at her lead agent and said, "Schedule a press briefing for tomorrow. I'll address this personally." The next morning, standing behind the podium at FBI headquarters, she spoke with controlled authority. "Last night, I was detained at Reagan National Airport by 2 uniformed officers. Despite showing my credentials and identifying myself, I was handcuffed and accused of impersonating a federal official. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a failure of protocol, compounded by bias." Her words resonated far beyond the press room. She didn't seek revenge. She sought change. "I want systemic reform, not punishment. The system that trained these officers must teach respect, verification, and the recognition of authority without relying on assumptions based on appearance." The headlines the next day reflected the impact. FBI director detained, a lesson on bias. Public humiliation turns into call for change. Elena Carter speaks with calm authority. Her presence became a symbol, not of victimhood, but of courage, restraint, and leadership under pressure. The officers involved were reassigned pending review, but Elena's focus was broader. She initiated new training programs for federal personnel, emphasizing identification, bias awareness, and responsible discretion. Letters of gratitude and reflection poured in, from young students, fellow officers, and even retired law enforcement officials who admitted the incident, forced them to confront their own assumptions. Late that evening, back at her office, Elena looked at a photo from her first day at Quantico. The weight of every challenge, every slight, every moment she had been underestimated had led to this. She hadn't just defended herself. She had turned a personal injustice into a lesson for the entire nation. In the end, the story wasn't about cuffs or humiliation. It was about authority, dignity, and the quiet power of standing firm in the face of prejudice. And for anyone watching, the message was clear. Respect must precede assumption, and courage can reshape the system from within. If you've experienced or witnessed the same, share your story in the comments and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so together we can spread the message further.